February 28th, 1994, this was the day that I guess my soul decided to enter the realm of existence, you could say. I was born in February and on a Monday, and I kind of attribute that to maybe why I like early mornings, coffee, using my agenda, and all the nerdy things that are Monday. I feel like the universe can kind of work in mysterious ways that way. And I was also born a Pisces, and I tend to relate a lot to the characteristics of a Pisces, like being a bit more introverted, sensitive, and emotional, amongst quite a few other things. I was born into a family of 5, which was made up of my dad, my mom, my older sister Kira, who was 5 years older than me when I was born, and then just a short 5 years after I was born, my brother came in to complete our picture. It's funny looking back on it now because when we were younger, my siblings and I fought so much, but now that we're older, we're all like best friends. And I'm super lucky because being the middle child, I'm like, the icing to the Oreo, but I'm also closest to both of them in age. So I get to be super close with both of my siblings, and we're all like best friends. Speaking of which, when I was younger, I was super into animals, and I actually went vegetarian when I was 12, and that ended up going vegan in 2013, but I feel like I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. But as a kid, I absolutely loved animals. That was like my number one thing I was obsessed with, aside from maybe, clothes, and I always thought I'd grow up to be like a tree hugger and somehow help the environment. Growing up, I had a really good childhood. We had so many good memories, and I remember just being super close with my family, even though things were like not perfect, but everything always felt just safe and comfortable. Practically half of my childhood was spent at my Nana's and Papa's house. They were like second parents to me, and I just remember having so many memories with them growing up. It was crazy. We were so close to them. We would fake sick all the time so that we could stay home from school just to hang out with them, and they would take us to get McDonald's, and we would build birdhouses and go to the flea market and get Goosebumps books. I honestly had some of the coolest grandparents ever, and some of my best memories were made with them. In elementary school, I feel like I had it pretty easy. I just coasted through school, and I made some of actually my best friends still to date when I was in elementary school. But moving into high school, now that was a little bit of a different story. Looking back on high school now, I can remember just trying so hard to be accepted and to fit in. I did have good memories of high school, mind you. I'm not saying that it was all horrible. I made great memories with some of my really good friends, but a lot of high school I actually spent very alone and confused, and I actually got bullied pretty hard in high school too. So there was like a phase I remember where I would be afraid to go to school, even though I wouldn't want to admit it, because there were times where I'd show up and things would be written on my locker. I would be like getting in fights in the hallways. It was just so uncomfortable, and this was when I first started to experience panic attacks. I would have really bad anxiety. I got really bad depression. I started to withdraw a lot and spend a lot of time outside of school, just in my bedroom, or even just faking sick and skipping school to stay home and just lay in bed all day. And this was my first experience with really battling depression. But then grade 11 came around and things started to change. I joined the cheerleading team in high school, and as lame as this sounds, honestly, it was one of those things that completely changed my year. I had so much fun. My cheer team felt like such a little family to me, and I just remember having so much fun with them. We were all so close, and going away to cheer competitions are still some of like my favorite memories when I think back on high school. So without a doubt, grade 11 was my best year. Between making memories with friends, I also had a serious high school boyfriend at the time, and I was getting like straight A's. Until grade 12 came around and pretty much shattered my entire world. It was towards the end of grade 12 that my dad and my mother decided to split up. If you could kind of even call it that. It was a super messy split. Unfortunately, I think because there was so much, toxic turmoil between the two of them, it was one of those things that we very unintentionally were stuck in the middle, and I don't think anyone wanted us to be stuck in the middle, but it was just one of those things that there was really no other way. And so my siblings and I all kind of felt a little confused and weren't really sure how to deal with it because there wasn't really any closure. It was so messy, and it kind of still is messy to this day. And so it was then that I noticed I started skipping classes. I became extremely anxious. I was withdrawing from life, and I just remember feeling so detached. I spent so much time in my bedroom and just didn't really leave because I didn't know how to deal with that emotion and that feeling of like losing that sense of home and that sense of family. I became this girl in her bedroom, and I just never left. I was so socially awkward, and I felt so anxious all the time and depressed that I just didn't even know what to do. And it was through that I started finding things like YouTube and music and books, and if it weren't for those things, I'm not sure how hard I would have been able to push through that. And so it was from that I discovered my love of YouTube and wanting to capture moments and kind of highlight the better things in life. And it's so weird looking back that this is one of the weirdest, worst times of my life, but also one of the most pivotal. And I don't think I would be who I am today if it wasn't for that portion of my life. In the midst of all of that going on, graduation rolled around and I graduated from high school, and I was super excited about it because in a weird way, it kind of felt like a new beginning and I had a chance to kind of try something new and shake things up. So I graduated with my best friends, I went to prom, I had a really good time, and then that summer, I had last minute decided to pack up my things and go away to college. I was initially going to take a year off, but with everything that went on with my family, I just wanted to kind of escape. So I went away to college last second and followed my high school boyfriend to the same city he was going to. I ended up going to Conestoga College, where you guys saw my initial dorm tour, which we talked about in a recent video. It was jokes. I went for interior decorating at Conestoga College, and this was actually, honestly, one of the best decisions I think I made. Because of that course, I had to get a DSLR camera, so I started filming videos again. I fell in love with fall that year. This is when the addiction to coffee began. Like, this year really created a lot of my current situation, and it was from living alone that I felt this sense of independence, and I got that space and clarity to kind of figure out that even though this wasn't exactly where I needed to be, I started having this weird feeling like there was something else out there for me, and Kitchener and where I was going to school wasn't it. I decided to move back home and follow my gut feeling, but I still look back on this portion of my life and see it as such a huge, like, kind of like awakening, and it really did help me become who I am. But I still felt like I had to go home. And so with that, I packed my things back up, went back to Kingston, and decided to get some time and some space to really decide what I wanted to do with my life. And over that year, I worked at a gym, I worked at like a nutrition place, I hung out with my friends, I made some really good memories. This year was again one of those things that looking back now, I think my gut knew that I needed to do it before I felt like I needed to do it. And it was also in that time that I decided that I wanted to get a dog. And so I picked up my little fur child Bentley on June 21st, 2013. Sorry, his pictures are so cute. Oh my god. That is when I picked up Bentley, and his little, soul alliance with mine began. Shortly after that, Thanksgiving rolled around, and my grandparents, who had moved away about 14 hours to PEI, came down for the weekend and came for Thanksgiving. And it was weird because it was over that time that my papa, who had battled with his health most of his life, became very sick. And because he was in Kingston, we got to visit him and such in the hospital, which is again one of those weird things that I feel like the universe had planned before we did. But he ended up passing away on November 21st, 2013, which was really hard for our family because he was just like, I wish you guys could have met him. He was the coolest, wisest person ever, and he was such a huge supporter of my YouTube. He used to watch all my videos in massive font, and I still think about him every day. So basically within 1 year, my parents had split, my papa had passed away, I had gone to school, come home from school, and I was just feeling all kinds of confused. I wasn't sure what was going on, what direction I was heading in, and through all of that confusion, I decided to move out and move into my dad's house. He was also the one that lost his dad, aka my papa, so I was also worried about him. But not only that, we were best friends. My dad was always like my superhero growing up, so with moving in with him, it brought me back a bit more of a sense of comfort again, and it was in the living at his apartment with him that I actually took on YouTube full time, and my YouTube really started to take off, and I actually got to really put my passion and my full dedication into it. My dad was also such a huge supporter, and he'd help me out with cameras and things like that, and I just got to put all of my focus and my drive into YouTube and taking it on full time, and it kind of created this sense of family online that I felt like I was kind of missing in real life. And it wasn't too long after that I decided to pack up all my things yet again and move into my very first actual apartment. Now, this was one of the apartments that you guys can totally check out on my channel. I have so many videos and stuff of it. I moved in with my boyfriend at the time, and this was honestly one of my favorite apartments I've lived in because it just had such a cozy vibe to it. And even though things started to feel a bit better, I was still dealing a lot with social anxiety anxiety, I was getting panic attacks even worse at this point, and my depression started coming in for longer periods of the year, and so I was still dealing a lot with that. And on the outside, even though I think things seemed totally okay, and in a lot of ways they were, on the inside it was like I was battling this own kind of war inside my mind, where I still felt like something was wrong and something was missing, and my emotions weren't fully dealt with or in check. And so this was like the second time in my life that I had that weird gut feeling that I wasn't where I was meant to be, but I had learned what I needed to from that point. And so, like I said, this will always be such a comforting, homey place inside my heart, but I decided to move out, and in 2015, I moved into my second apartment and decided to move in with my best friend, Megs. Now, if you guys happen to watch my channel at all during that time, you'll totally know who I'm talking about, but this was actually, honestly, still to date, one of the best decisions I've ever made. Living with Maggie was so much fun. We were best friends. We never fought at all. And honestly, we spent the majority of our time oogling over Justin Bieber, Taylor Swift. We'd go for walks, and there was like a Starbucks by our place, and we'd go get Starbucks and sushi all the time. We lived in our house that was made in the 1860s, so we were 100% haunted, but at least we were being haunted kind of together. And there were so many centipedes and bugs in this house, but it was so weird because it had so much character, and we just loved it. The majority of our time was spent drinking new wines. We would watch Netflix, like honestly binge on Netflix, have dance parties, make potatoes in every single form that you could possibly make a potato. So, I mean, you know, it kind of balanced out being haunted and infested with bugs. It was during this time of living with Maggie that I went through some serious, like, breakups, some serious family stuff. We both just had, like, so much stuff going on all the time that at the end of the day, we would just get together, drink a glass of wine, dance party it out, and everything would just feel so much better. And I felt like I got that, like, sense of, you know, when you go away to school or university and you have, like, your roommate, I felt like I got that from living in this apartment. And kind of like I'd stopped speeding up my life and went back to where I should have been at the age I was. And I think that's why after living in this apartment, I finally felt like I was ready to live on my own without anybody else. And so I did just that and spent the rest of that year traveling and just kind of like being single, living alone, and doing my own thing, and just honestly just taking a breath and figuring out why I was always feeling like something was wrong or missing. And I think it was from this moment of solitude, even though things weren't easy and being alone all the time got hard, I think if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have figured out that the part that was missing was this sense of home and security that was no longer around. It was like I was chasing this feeling of nostalgia. And so I decided that with Kingston no longer feeling like home, I had to go and kind of create or find a new home. And so I did just that. I had always wanted to move to Toronto, but I decided last second to just jump the gun and do it. Packed up my things yet again and came here. I think the whole reason why this year I felt more myself than I felt for so long is because I actually gave myself the space and the time to kind of recreate that sense of home within instead of constantly searching for it in other people and in other places. And I think looking back now, all of the things that I used to want to run away from, all the happy memories that I thought were tainted, all of the hardships, all of the weird, awkward phases, they all kind of melted into this one almost journey, as lame as that sounds, that kind of led me to exactly where I am right now, sitting here, making this voiceover, making this video, and everything is so deeply connected and woven, and so I don't think you could take out the bad without taking out the good. I read once that life can only be lived forwards but understood backwards, and I finally understand what that means. I think that no matter what, we're always going to have questions, but we'll only look back one day to understand that each and every move we make, every decision we make, it's all just a puzzle piece in our life. If it weren't for things like anxiety and depression, I wouldn't be doing what I do. If it weren't for the people in my life, I wouldn't be who I am. And so I feel like if it doesn't make sense now, one day it all will. And if we constantly spend our life trying to figure it out, then we'll forget to enjoy it while it's actually here.